Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good holiday weekend. Had the opportunity to enjoy yourself with family and friends, or just relax, or take a few minutes away from the classroom anyway. Just wanted to go over this past week's info briefly, and then kind of a what's to come for this week as well as our quiz questions. So last week we talked about fraud and abuse, False Claims Act, Stark, anti-kickback. So that was a good discussion, good discussion in the discussion board, very interesting different types of cases that are out there, and it's a great way for us to learn about these types of issues actually today. And it's not, although it may end up turning into False Claims Act issues, although at this point it doesn't look like it. I had just seen an article about the folks from Butler Hospital that were embezzling money from there. So lots of recent local stuff with regard to legal issues in the hospital setting, and also some great national issues that you all brought up in the discussion board. So good work there. I look forward to taking a look at your infographics this coming week to see what types of aspects of the different laws that you had picked up to put into your infographic. So I'll talk briefly about the quiz questions. Obviously, we talked about contracts this week as well, and when we're the contract discussion and the the contract discussion and Stark and the anti-kickback statute all are very closely tied. So that's why we talked a bit about contracts this week as well. And it looks like the questions that we had issues with this week were all on contracts. So we'll talk a little bit about these. So question number 1, a contract serves to provide one or more parties with a legal remedy to, lots of answers here, but the correct answer is require the parties to perform its legal obligation pursuant to the terms of the contract, which makes good sense. When you have a contract, you want, obviously, you're hoping that there won't be a need for legal remedy, that everybody will hold up their end of the bargain, but in a contract, you're always going to have that option, that legal remedy, to make sure that the people are performing their obligations. And if they're not, then you can take action on that. Some of the other answers here: prevent compliance with contractual obligations. We would never want to prevent compliance. We want to encourage compliance. And then the last one that people sometimes chose: require the parties to a contract not to perform its legal obligations pursuant to the contract. So that's kind of the opposite of the correct answer. We definitely want people to perform the obligations that are stated in the particular contract. Second question. If a contract is to be considered valid, an offer must be, and several answers, but an offer must be communicated. So that's really the first step in a contracting situation. Even if it's just a verbal contract, an express verbal contract, you still have to make an offer. So, hey, I'll give you $100 for that bicycle. That's your offer. Now then, there's oftentimes, you'll have acceptance of the offer, or maybe there'll be negotiation. But the first thing that has to happen is an offer has to be made. And that offer being made is communicating that. So an offer has to be communicated. Some of the other answers here: assumed, tacit, inferred. Those are not, we want an actual communication of an offer. In order for there to be a contract, both parties need to be involved in some way. Now, sometimes when we make an offer, and I don't know if that's, nope, that's not the next one. So sometimes when we make an offer, we communicate an offer, and we don't need a formal written signature to detail out that the other party to the contract accepted the offer. Sometimes it's just a handshake. We call those handshake agreements a lot. And that is a feasible way to take part in a contract as well. But the key is you have to communicate the offer first. So our answer there is communication, or communicated. Last quiz question: contracts, particularly those in writing, serve to minimize misunderstandings and offer a means for parties to, several answers here. The correct answer is resolve disputes. So that's the key to a contract, is that we not only put things, hopefully in writing, not always in writing, sometimes they're oral verbal contracts, but especially those in writing are very key to making sure everyone knows what their part of the bargain is. And also that if somebody doesn't hold up their part of the bargain, there's a mechanism for resolving that dispute. So for example, if I am putting together a contract for one of the topics that they talked about in the textbook are if you go to work for an organization that says, okay, if you work for me for let's say it's nursing, you come and work for me at my hospital for 5 years, I'll pay off your student loans. I'll pay all of your tuition that you have and you have waiting that you're needing to pay. So, or sometimes you can have a situation where someone will go to work somewhere, maybe as a patient care tech or something like that, and go to nursing school on the dime of the facility. In those cases, there will be a contract in place that says that everyone holds up their end of the bargain. I pay off your student loans. You come work for me for X number of years. But the dispute part is if you don't stay for that amount of time, you owe the entire thing back, X amount of the thing back, whatever it is. So, and there's a mechanism to resolve that dispute. So by putting that in writing in a contract, it makes it very clear what the mechanism is to resolve disputes of that nature. So important to contracting overall. So this coming week, go up here and click into week 7, we are talking about a few different things, but they kind of fall into categories of medical staff responsibilities, professional responsibilities, and also responsibilities of hospitals with regard to legal issues overall. So one of the things we're going to focus on is EMTALA, Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act, which is what our discussion board is this week. You've got some info up here about EMTALA, and there's tons of info online as well. Then we also have this really interesting video, and it's 13 minutes long. I would encourage you to take a look at it. We don't have an assignment. I did have an assignment associated with it, but I dropped it just because of because your final projects are due this week. But really interesting about taking advantage of folks in the long-term care setting. So an interesting video there, definitely worth the 14 minutes there that you'll take watching that video. But also, most important this week is our final project. So your final projects are due by Sunday night, and this is only week 7. Next week is week 8, but it's a short week. It only goes from Monday through Friday. So week 7 final projects are due, and you'll be doing a 3 to 5 page paper on a topic. It could be an ethical issue of some sort. Maybe something is touched something off in your brain that you want to dig into further, some of the ethical issues that we've been discussing, or just finding a specific legal case that's out there. We've looked at a lot of different cases through that through the term in the textbook. So maybe digging into one of those cases in a bit more detail. So you have two options. You can do either a case study or a case brief, or you can do just a paper about an ethical issue. Either way, but a couple things that I'll remind you of. Number one, always make sure that that you're writing it with resources in mind. So I've seen a lot of folks recently in my courses that are just kind of making broad statements like 50% of people really enjoy learning about ethics. Well, I can't make that statement on my own because I haven't done research. Even if I had done research and determined that 50% of people really enjoyed learning about ethics, I would have to provide that resource of where that's coming from. Either if it's primary research, I need to cite the data, etc. So I'm seeing a lot of these, and you'll see me note it in your papers as broad sweeping statements. We can't make assumptions based on just general things out of the air, and I'm getting the feeling that some of you are doing that, just trying to fill space in your papers. Be sure that you're using resources. You know, the articles in in our classroom, textbooks, research, use Google Scholar, use Google. Just make sure they're legitimate resources. Wikipedia is not a legitimate resource, but make sure you're using legitimate resources to review these topics and then make educated statements in your paper. Anytime that you write down something, even if it's in your own words, that you have learned about elsewhere, you need to cite that information in text. So you're going to say, you know, EMTALA, EMTALA is the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act, and here's what it does. That's not knowledge that's yours. That's somebody else taught you that. So you would probably be citing this fact sheet, or maybe you're reading an article and you're citing that article. You always need to be citing where this information is coming from. If it's pure general knowledge, like the sky is blue, you don't have to cite that. But most of the things that we're talking about in this class are not general knowledge, likely not things that you've dealt with a lot prior to taking this class. So make sure that you're citing things properly. Also, like I said, you want to make educated statements about some of the more general things, like your ethical issue that you choose, or the case brief. So you want to make educated statements. Don't just write as if it's a reflection. We do have some reflective papers, but this one certainly is not a reflective paper. I'm looking more for what are you able to find about this topic, and then give additional detail, provide arguments for both sides of an issue if you're doing the ethical issue. And I'll put up a link. It was in here, but you can't, the links don't stay in a Turnitin assignment, unfortunately. But so I'll put a link in the announcement for this week about the student case brief, and that will hopefully be helpful to you as well. But don't lose points on things like APA. Don't get caught up in a situation where you may have an academic integrity issue. Don't lose points on commas and punctuation marks, those types of things. Make sure that you're using your resources, things like Smart Thinking, Grammarly, just using Word, putting it on the formal setting, so you're checking grammar there, spelling, and also be sure that you're going back, rereading your papers when you're writing them, editing, not just taking one fell swoop at the paper and sending it in. We can tell those things. We're seeing those things in papers, and we want you to really concentrate a little harder on becoming a professional writer, because when you move into the workplace, you're going to have to write. It's just part of what we do in healthcare. So you might not be writing formal papers anymore, but you will be writing memos, white papers, just writing information for your superiors to learn about different topics. So important that you can write in a professional manner. We don't want to write as we speak. It needs to be much more formal. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to address specific questions, but it's a very important part of what we do in healthcare. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, like I said, let me know. I'll look forward to seeing your thoughts on EMTALA in the discussion board this week. And that's all I've got. So thanks so much.